Welcome back to Unraveled Game Thoughts. I am on my top 100 list of games for 2024, hitting up numbers 21 to 30 in this particular video. I'm going to open up my Board Game Geek here so I can look up some of these games for designers and sometimes other aspects depending on what I'm highlighting on the particular game. But we're gonna do number 30. Am I right? Yeah, we're on number 30. And this is a 2023 game, relatively new on the radar, although I feel like in the world of board games this probably is going to sound like old news. But there is a recent expansion of this game that I've been able to try out on BGA. It is not bad. I haven't decided if it's like, do I want to add it or not? I'm not sure yet. But it seems good as far as expansions go, and it's basically more of the same for all intents and purposes. This is designed by Maxime Tardif and is published by Inside Up Games. It is Earth. Earth may possibly be the epitome of a tableau building game. You are building a grid of 4x4 cards. That is your environment in which you're building. You start the game with a board that has a couple of cards that might dictate a little bit of the direction you're going to go in the game. One of them is going to indicate your starting resources. One's going to be sort of some private goal you might be shooting for, and another is going to give you a little bit of a bonus on a particular action. And all those cards are going to have dual sides if you have a physical copy of the game. If you're playing on BGA, it's going to look like you have different cards, but it's actually both sides of the same card, and or either side of the same card. And there's a trade-off. You're going to have some trade-off in which side you select. So if you get more starting resources, you're probably getting less of an in-game bonus. But if you want a really good in-game bonus, you're probably just going to get fewer resources to start with. So you're selecting the side for each of those cards, and then that's probably going to do some level of guidance as to what cards do I want to try to put into my tableau. Now, there are only 4 actions in the game. You are either getting soil, you're watering, you're kind of adding plants to your cards, little green cubes that you put in cards that can take those cubes. Your soil is essentially the money in the game. You use soil to pay to put cards in your tableau. You might be adding trees to your cards that can take trees, or you're drawing cards. So everything in the game is some kind of resource. You have it's called a compost pile. It's kind of like a discard pile, except it's not really a discard pile, because if you're just discarding cards, they would go to your to an actual outside the like a card. It's not part of your tableau. But if they're putting cards in your compost pile, they're either probably coming from your hand, or sometimes you can add them straight from the deck, the draw deck, into the discard pile. And that compost pile, there are other cards in the game that when triggered can actually take cards out of your compost pile in order to give you more resources of one sort or another. But every card in that compost pile is going to be a point. And you're largely trying to arrange your tableau in a way where there's some common goals that everyone's going for, so you're trying to maybe be the first to get to some of those common goals, or you are trying to position certain cards in certain ways in your tableau that are going to score you more points. There's not a universal game rule that says how they score points, but some cards are, I think they're called Earth cards. They don't get triggered by actions in the game. But they're going to probably score points in some way based on how you've done your tableau. It might be based on the cards orthogonally adjacent to them, might be on the cards diagonally adjacent to them. Most of the interactions in the game are going to be based on the actions taken. Like I said, there's 4 actions. When you take an action, so you get the main action that gives you those sort of base resources I described, and then whatever the color of the action, so say I take the yellow action, I can either trigger the cards in my tableau, the cards on my player board, or that action in whatever order. I think I have to do the action first. I do the action first, and then I can trigger my tableau or my player board, either one, in either order I choose. One of the magic things of this game, that's all simultaneous. So every action has I guess you could call it like a follow action. This is an action that the other players get to do, which is usually something of a lesser version of the main action. But they also get to trigger their tableau and player board based on the color chosen for that action. So say I take the green, play a card action into my tableau, I can play 2 cards, and then I can trigger any other cards in my tableau or on my player board that are triggered by taking the green action. Other players are going to get to play 1 card, and then they're going to get to trigger their tableau as well. So if I'm the start player, I choose the action, everything triggers, everybody does their actions, then it passes, that player chooses, so forth and so on. As soon as somebody has completed their 4x4 grid, the game will end. I think you finish that round, and then the game ends. But I could be mistaken. It's been a minute. I don't recall if the game ends instantly as soon as that happens after that turn, or if actually we get to finish the round and then it happens. I do think it's pretty soon, so it's not like you get, it might be at the end of that player's turn. So you probably get to finish all the things for that turn, and then I think the game's over. So you're kind of watching other tableaus to see who's getting close to finishing the 16-card tableau. You could really spend some time gathering resources in order to play really good cards. But if somebody else, say, finishes their tableau, gets all 16 cards, maybe you have good point setups in yours, but if at the end of the game you just haven't built enough up point-wise, and they finish their tableau, they can kind of end the game with the most points because they were able to get them along the way. There's points come from all over in this game. Everything scores some points, so there's a lot of point salad calculation. But if you have the BGA app, points are, is it called the Points app? I forget what it's called. But I use it to track my gameplays. They have a point scorer in there, and it walks you through all the stuff. It's real easy. But Earth is a great game, highly thematic. It feels very like you're trying to manipulate your environment to get all the points you can. It is a tableau builder, so mechanically it sort of fits in well with the theme, and it's very pretty. All the cards have great art on them. Art is actually done by M81 Studio, Connor Magui, Yulia Zonik, and Kenneth Spond. But it is a very beautiful game when all set up. So that is 30. Moving right along, my number 29 is a game that I unfortunately have not gotten to the table recently. It is on BGA, and I have played it. Actually, I think it's on BGA. I'm assuming it's still there. I just haven't played it in a minute. But it is a good game. I got rated at a 9.11. And this is, I want to say the guy's name is Jorge Xavier. Let's see how close I am. If you haven't guessed the game, you got a couple of seconds. Xavier Jorges, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Either that or it's Xavier Georges, which I don't think is correct. So we're going to say Xavier Jorges. And this is art is by Ian O'Toole. It is Carnegie. It is a very beautiful game. I would say it's a pretty unique design and how it works. You start with sort of basic action departments, and you kind of want to move your workers into new departments that you'll trigger that are more powerful over the course of the game. You're also trying to build up income. It's got a unique sliding system on the right side of the board that you are trying to build up your income over the course of the game. And the action selection system has a very unique what do you call it? Pick an action, and then everybody else follows and does the same action. So you're kind of watching, what are other people doing? What kind of actions do I think they want to take? So that you can also take that action and maybe make sure you have the resources to do so on your turn. But it is a very well designed game. I played it I think before it even came out. They did a lot of play testing on BGA, and I probably played this 30, 40 times. But it's a lot of fun, and it is, I think, one of the better game designs as far as pulling together. I don't know that any mechanic in it is particularly unique, but the way they've pulled together the mechanics makes for a very tight, enjoyable, economic system where you're trying to manage your resources and your actions simultaneously in such a way that you really have to pay attention to what other people are doing, because you may even sometimes want to pick an action that, maybe it's not ideal for me, but I can see that this other player can't do much of anything, and if it looks like they're getting ahead of me, maybe I'll take that action. I can at least do something that kind of nerfs their turn. However, there is the caveat of once per game, you have this option of doing any action you want, and then then it's gone. I think it gives you points at the end of the game if you don't use that option. It's like extra points, but it's not a ton of extra points. So it definitely behooves you to use that. Oh, hey, you pick that action. Everybody's got to follow it. Well, I'm going to use my any action I want this round token, and then that's gone. So I can't remember if it's a token or if it's just there's some way of marking it so you know by the end of the game if you've used it or not. But yeah, Carnegie, very good. If you haven't tried it, I'd say it's worth a play, and I would definitely give it a shot on BGA, see what you think. And it's probably going to it took me 3 or 4 plays before I really felt like I was understanding how all the mechanisms work together with the map and placing my tokens out on the main board versus trying to get things on the income. And I think there are a lot of different potential ways you could go because there's so many different departments. So it's not like any one particular strategy is going to be the best strategy. To my knowledge, I'm not one that gets into games to try to figure out the absolute best strategy. But this one seems like it's got some good depth to it. So give it a shot if you have not tried it yet. Number 28 is another Vital Lacerda game. And this one, when did this come out? This actually has 2 versions. I don't know how many of his games have multiple versions, but this is Kanban EV, which came out in 2020. How did I get a copy of this? I think this was given to me this past Christmas, if I remember correctly. I think it was this past Christmas. I believe my mother-in-law gifted me this game, and I wanted to try it for a long time. I just didn't know anybody who had it available or had gotten it out to the table. It looked really fun. It looks very thematic. That's one of the things I love about a lot of Vital Lacerda games is the high intense thematics involved in the game. This one you have multiple departments as the different sort of spaces in the game where you're operating, and it's worker placement for all intents and purposes. You place your worker. Everybody it's almost programmed because everybody places their worker, or you're moving your worker from one spot to another, and wherever then you kind of, okay, you do all actions from top to bottom. So you do an action at the top of the board, you're going to go first, but you're going to sometimes want the stuff from the bottom. And then you have Sandra, who's the department head, who's like almost like an AI that goes through and judges people on their departments and how good they're doing. And so you want to get your training fleshed out in a department so that she doesn't judge you. Maybe she judges somebody else, and there's some bad things that happen if you get judged. Or you could like sort of play the game in a way where you're like, well, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'll just pay whatever the cost is going to be for that. I think it's usually losing some points. And you're ultimately trying to develop each department or your tableau where you will store your cars that you have built and your parts that you have either upgraded or obtained. And you're trying to work toward sort of these collective goals in a meeting. And eventually, via various mechanics in the game, you're going to trigger a meeting. And at that point, you're sort of like going around and you want these idea tokens that you're going to be able to use to claim points. And it's a little bit of a first come, first serve. So maybe two of us have, the option of gaining a really high point value, but because of turn order, maybe they get to go first, so they steal the higher point value one, and I can get the same goal possibly, but I got to get a lower point value because it came around to me second. So it's thematically extremely fun, and there's a little bit of, I want to say a little bit of upkeep. I don't feel like it's that hard to keep up with the moving parts on the board. Once you kind of understand what each department does, this is probably a relatively low upkeep, in my opinion, for a Vital Lacerda game. However, it is weighted at 4.31. I think that's a little high for Kanban EV personally. However, I could see there being some weight to thinking through, like trying to decide which department do I want to go to. And while there's not that many, there's only like 5 departments, and one of those departments is actually like go here, and then you can pick which other department you want to work in. But there's some pretty thinky, mechanics to work through as far as, I see this person took this spot up here. I can't go to the spot I was just in, so I got to pick one of these other spots. Maybe it's less ideal, but what can leverage me to jump ahead further down the road? There's a lot of nuts and bolts to the process of playing this game. It took us a while, 180 minutes. It took us longer than that to play. We were playing 4-player game. I want to say it took us about 4 hours, but it was a learning game. Nobody had ever played before. Not at 4 players. I think I'd played the solo once or twice. I kind of knew the game and read the rules, but with the teach plus playing 4 players, it took us a while to get to that game. I want to say we finished at like 1 or 2 a.m. that morning when we were playing it. All right, number 27 is another Stonemaier game. I cannot recall who the designer is on this one. It was Jamie Stegmaier. So Jamie is the designer of this game, published by Stonemaier Games, art by Andrew Bosley and Rom Brown. This is Tapestry. I think Tapestry might. I don't know if I could say it's a. Let's see, what's its overall rank? 280 overall. That's not bad. I was going to say Tapestry could be construed as possibly an underrated game, but at 280, if you're not familiar with how many games are ranked, there are over 300,000 ranked games on BGA. So being number 280 is not that bad. Pretty much if you're in the top 500, you're not doing too bad. That being said, I do think this is better than 280. It's a nifty puzzle. I do enjoy playing it on Board Game Arena, in part because I don't have to get out parts and pieces and manage all of that. But even with that, that's a lot of fun. It's got really nice painted buildings that come with the base game. I have all the expansions for this, at least that I'm aware of. I think I have them all. And does it all fit into one box? I'm pretty sure, here it is on my shelf. I'm pretty sure that box has every single expansion in the game. What was it? Plots and Ploys, Arts and Architecture, and what was that last one? Fantasies and Futures. I think that's all of them. Personally, my favorite is Arts and Architecture because it adds another track. So you have your 4 main tracks, and it adds another track. Now, my current disappointment is that I can't figure out, it looks like it should be on BGA, but I can't figure out how to make that work on Arena. Not Arena, I don't mean like in a competitive way, but I think it's on the alpha version, if not beta. And it looks like you should be able to play with Arts and Architecture, which should have that track that I'm pretty sure came with that section. And I could be wrong. It could be Fantasies and Futures that had that, but I thought it was the Arts and Architecture that added the 5th track. So, but Tapestry is a beautiful game. It is. It's hard to say, is it really a Civ game? I think it's marketed to some degree as a civilization game. You're leading a civilization. But you're going to get debate on whether or not it's really a Civ game. Even though you are kind of managing a civilization, it probably doesn't operate like most Civ games. And I would probably argue I might not like it as much if it was much more like a Civ game. It's more of an abstract puzzle where you're trying to leverage the different tracks in the game, doing the actions you can take and leverage your resources to get the most out of those tracks and make that synchronize with your civilization and what your civilization does in order to score the most points. I've seen point scores in the 300 to 400s, and I think I've scored 300 a couple of times. I don't think I've ever gotten the 400. But it is pretty challenging to do, and it offers some fun competition. But even when I don't win, I still love playing this game, and it's a lot of multiplayer solitaire for all intents and purposes. But you do pay attention to what other people are doing to some degree, because even on the main board, there's potentially attacking another person's town, trying to topple their tower. They have trap cards, so sometimes I'm paying attention, like how many cards does the person have in their hand. If they only have 1 or 2, I might be more inclined to try to topple their tower. If they don't, or taking a chance that they don't have a trap card. But if you have a trap card in your hand, you can end up toppling their tower when they try to attack you, which is very nice. And then some of the other expansions offered some. I think there's like a trap for a trap or something like that now in the Fantasies and Futures. I play tested it, but I can't remember what the actual card was, but I do know it added enough that made it pretty fun. Plus the maps are a little bit more complex in how you develop the synergies to get resources on the Fantasies and Futures expansion. So a lot of fun, lot of different strategies and things that have gone into the creation and the development of Tapestry over time. It does take a while to set up. So if there's one thing that makes it hard to get to the table, it is the setup time. But it is my number, what was I on? 27. So this is a game I really like. All right. Next on the list is another game that actually, I don't know if I've put a co-op game on here, but this is a co-op game that came out in 2017. I cannot remember when I added it, and you might be able to see. You can't quite see it. It's behind Gloomhaven. I've got a good chunk of the expansions to this game. It is Spirit Island. So this is by R. Eric Royce, and it is published by Greater Than Games. And I liked this game a lot. And then I think it was the Jagged, I don't think it was the Jagged Earth. There's a smaller expansion that's not, I think it's Branch and Claw. I got the Branch and Claw expansion first, and that added these what do they call them, like event cards to the game, and that was like that upped this game for me quite a bit because the base game I felt like it was fun to play and I enjoyed it, and it was as a co-op, it was a very good co-op, but I did feel like there was a little bit of a rote feeling where if you can just synergize with the other players, then you would be good. Now, I wouldn't say that was 100% easy because in the games I played where even one player wasn't synergizing, it was hard to win. But I felt like with a little synergy, it was not, and it wasn't that hard to synergize. To kind of just work together and say you do this, you do that, um, and and make it work. But I think the event cards add a lot, and I thought the branch and claw tokens were going to be a little too much, but I don't think they are. I think they just make it more fun. And the new spirits, both in Branch and Claw and in Jagged Earth and in Nature Incarnate, I think all add just a lot of complexity and fun interaction and ways you can try to fight against the invaders. It is very creative. It's very well designed. Every spirit feels very unique and different. And I think it offers an immense amount of replay value because it's not just about attacking the invaders. If you're not familiar with this game, you can do damage to invaders with your spirits in different ways, but there's also this aspect of fear. How much fear can you strike into the invaders? And that's a trickier one to work with because fear isn't necessarily doing direct damage to the invaders, but you build up enough fear and you can get these cards that will you'll flip over and activate depending on the level of fear that the invaders are experiencing. You're either on a level 1, level 2, or level 3. Then it will cause bad things to happen to the invaders and or give you really good things. And your path to victory, it could be get all the invaders off the island, but it could also be basically scaring them, or you get that last fear card out and you win the game. So you get through all the fear cards that are available. Not the cards, not the fear. There's fear tokens that's you're seeing how much fear you're generating, but there's cards that you'll flip over as you develop that fear, and you get through them all, and you can beat the invaders that way. So I hope I haven't made it sound like that was too easy to beat the invaders, because the complexity of spirits, when you start the game, you feel like you're starting behind the curve, and it takes some time to think, how do I want to develop my spirit? Because each spirit has different aspects of how you can develop it. Some aspects you might be getting more elements that you have access to. Other aspects are you can draw more cards, and another aspect is you can play more cards. Because until you've developed your spirit, you're kind of limited on how many cards you can play, and so forth and so on. And it takes time, and you sort of are playing defense for a while before you get to turn around and play offense. But even in playing defense, you have to pay attention to what the invaders are doing and make sure you're playing it in the right areas, because it's very easy to get wiped out by the invaders if they ravage too many lands or destroy too many of the Dahan. They have a much easier path to victory early game for sure. Late game, you can start building up some stuff and maybe trigger several things, and it's really fun to get a turn where you just like wipe out a whole bunch of them off the map at one point, if you're able to synergize with the other spirits and do that. But really fun, fantastic game. Kind of takes a learning curve for sure. Would never recommend this for a beginner, but if you like a good co-op and you like a good challenge and you like that challenge to be pretty variable from game to game, I'd say Spirit Island will offer you hours and hours of gameplay if you've got a good group to play with on a regular basis. All right, next up on the map is a newer game. that came out 2024. I backed this game, and it arrived earlier in the year. I want to say around February. I don't think I had it last year. I think it was earlier this year. Maybe it was the end of last year. But this is Ezra and Nehemiah by S.J. McDonald and Shem Phillips, published by Garphill Games. This is now I've never played Lisboa, but whenever I play Ezra and Nehemiah, I just wonder how much like Lisboa this is. Largely that's because you're clearing rubble off the wall, and this is set in ancient Israel, returning from exile, clearing the rubble off the wall and rebuilding the walls around Jerusalem. For those who might think this is a religious game, I would say it doesn't come off that way. It does not feel like a religious game. It just feels like you're playing within that section of history, and it is quite fun. This offers, so if you're familiar with paladins and how the system of I'm trying to take a a blue, red, or black action in paladins, I think, based on your paladin and maybe some other things that might be giving your power level, power influence, or faith. This has a similar mechanic. It's either a gray action, a blue action, or a red action. And each of those different action types does something different. Gray is usually related to clearing rubble or building the wall or building gates. Red is usually having to do with something the priests or is it the priests? Yeah, sacrificing. It's like there's an area control piece of the board where you're putting resources out there, and then if you fill in certain things, you get some immediate reward, but then if you fill in certain columns, you can trigger other rewards for various players who are involved in it. And then there's a kind of like a track along the bottom that helps determine turn order and can potentially reward you with extra workers if you are furthest ahead on the track at the end of that thing. And then you have Ezra, or was it Haggai and Zechariah, as two prophets, and they're positioned depending on your game setup card you choose at different points along the altar track, and you're kind of trying to get your flame meeple to get past them both if you can, because that's going to get you the best reward. But you kind of want to land in between them at least, because that's at least not a punishment. If you're behind them, there's usually some kind of a negative thing that happens if you don't move it down that track. So the red action can help you do that more so than other things. And then you have the blue, teaching the Torah to people and or gaining tiles or access to tiles. You're putting your token on it, so you're the only, once you claim a tile, you're the only one that has that tile. So it's either an in-game bonus that accentuates something in the game, or if you get to the very top of the Torah point system, it's like almost an upside down pyramid, then that's going to be an end game scoring opportunity. So that's a little bit of the nuts and bolts of Ezra and Nehemiah. Among that, in all of that, you're gathering resources. You have the board that can be upgraded. You can upgrade parts of the board. So think like Taverns of Tiefenthal, where you can upgrade parts of your board. This has something similar. You pay a certain amount, you upgrade a part, gives you a bonus, offers you some other in-game options. And each card, I want to say they're multi-use cards, but that does not describe it very well, because your card is both it gives you this one, whenever you're playing a card, there's a certain way they're laid out in the tableau where you kind of increase in power, but you want to balance that over the course of the game. It has some really crunchy, fun mechanisms that work very well together, and it's not that hard of a game. 3.8 is actually pretty good weight, and after playing it a couple of times, I don't feel like the rules are too hard to grok, and it has a nice linear sort of like game arc that you can see the end from the beginning after you've played once or twice, but there's a lot of tension in like, what do I want to go after? Because you can't do everything in this game. You got to figure out what are you going to chase in order to try to end the game with the most potential points. So I feel like most games have been pretty close that we've played. But yeah, Ezra Nehemiah is, I would guess, this is ranked 1,194. This is a highly, highly underrated game. This is an absolutely fantastic game. I can only imagine that it's because it's so new that it's ranked there. I feel like this has got to come up higher, and it could be that because it's sort of got a religious theme or like a biblical theme, being Ezra and Nehemiah, I could see that turning some people off, and they might just avoid it altogether. But man, if you're one of those people, I would discourage that. It's not like trying to do anything weird that might make people uncomfortable. It is simply set in this historical time period and absolutely fun to play. So if you haven't played it and watching this video, encourage you to give it a shot, and you have a chance. I'd love to hear comments on what you think after getting a playthrough. I'd really prefer to hear comments after you've gotten 2 playthroughs, because I feel like the first one, you really need that learning kind of experiential playthrough. But if you've played a lot of Garfield games and you're able to jump in and kind of understand how everything works together right off the bat, then yeah, I'd love to hear what you think after getting a play of this. Next up, my number 24 is another Vital Lacerda game, and this one I actually currently have on my table right next to me. You can't see it because of my camera position, and I'm playing through the solo. And wow, I have it number 24, rated at 9.33. There's a solid chance this goes up. I like this game. When I first saw it, and I think I watched it on heavy cardboard, and my first thought was, this seems like a game that has a lot of interactions and mechanics that are just for the sake of a complex mechanic game. I was kind of feeling anti-Lacerda that day, I guess you could say. But having watched a few more playthroughs, I started to kind of think, I really want to try this game out. I don't know anybody in my game group that has it. So I forget how I got it. I think it was ended up being like I was asked what would I like to get for Father's Day this year, and I was like, you know what, this is the game I'd like to get. That came with a little trepidation at first. It's like, well, I hope I like it because it's kind of pricey for a game. But I am so glad that I ended up pushing the button and getting that game, because I think it reminds me a little bit of Brass Birmingham. Not in weight and complexity. This one's rated at a 4.69, and it's pretty complex. It has a lot of moving parts, and I would argue probably it would take it's probably not going to be to your second play you're going to feel really good about, like, I understand how all this stuff fits together. But I will say this, your second play of this game, you will feel like you know what you're doing, because you can pretty quickly see how all the parts fit together after one game. I would say when I got 4 players to the table, including myself, I want to say about halfway to 3/4 of the way through, you're kind of like, I see all this. I think we made some mistakes in that game and how we did at least the building of the where you put your tiles out on your board. I forget what that's called. Player tableau, and you have tiles that can trigger in game and end game points, and we didn't quite do that right, but we didn't mess it up too much, I don't think, either. It's did I say I know I said it's Lacerda 2024 4.69, so I think I said all the relevant things about the game. It probably takes, I think it took us about 4 hours to play this game. When we played it, it says 60 to 150 minutes. That's probably right. The solo seems to move pretty fast. I do feel like the solo, if I sat down and played it straight through and knew all the stuff that you can do for the solo, I would say it's probably about 90 minutes for the solo. Now, it's taking me longer because the AIs move and operate differently, and I'm trying to make sure that I have I'm doing the correct things for the AI, and that I'm doing the upkeep between eras correctly as much as I can. But it's fun, and I enjoy it, and I feel like all the actions and the mechanisms that operate, it feels like a Civ game to a large degree based on how you put out your civilians and what they can do. Now that's kind of in the context of a little bit of an asymmetric puzzle with the actions and what you're trying to do, but it's, man, the way those ideas flow, you present an idea, you invent the idea, you can innovate on it. That doesn't have to be done, but you can, and then that idea is shared, and then whenever somebody shares an idea, whoever invented it will have that, and they have some actions that they can trigger on the card, and then there are points given out for whoever shared it. And it's just like a lot of little bits and pieces that, while it might sound complex, man, they go together and make for a very fun, I think thematic, because I think thematically it makes sense to me, puzzle to play with. And so I really look forward to playing this again. I think at GreyCon in a few weeks I'm going to be pushing to try to get this one to the table with whoever is willing to play it and get a playthrough. Although we have to be prepared for probably a 4-hour play, but I think it will be well worth it, and I greatly enjoy this one. So that is Inventions, the Evolution of Ideas. Thank you, Lacerda. This is a good one. I don't know if it's my highest rated. We're not all the way through the list. It's not my highest rated, but I've started to get this itch in the back of my head, like this might be my highest rated Lacerda by the end of by the time we get to next year. We'll see. Okay. Next up is a game with multiple versions, and this is Great Western Trail New Zealand. Weighted at 3.95. That's a little bit higher than I thought it would be. 1 to 4 players. Designed by Alexander Pfister and published by Egertspiel Games. And Great Western Trail New Zealand pretty much just replaced Great Western Trail 2nd Edition for me. I felt like it did all the things Great Western Trail does, but a little bit better in a lot of different areas. So I would be highly unlikely to get Great Western Trail out again because I just like Great Western Trail New Zealand. I played it at, I think it was BGGCon last year. I was like, this is fantastic. I played it again several times with some other folks, and I really like it. I could probably play Great Western Trail on BGA if I wanted, but every time I play now, I'm just like, well, I wish I was playing Great Western Trail New Zealand, because I like the way you can kind of do a little bit more deck building. That has I like that deck building element. I kind of wanted some more to that in the 2nd edition, although I thought the 2nd edition was great. I had that rated pretty high. It's probably in the 8.5-ish range for me. And Great Western Trail New Zealand I have at a 9.36. It is a lot of fun. I don't know if it'll stick there. This one, it might fall down a little bit, but I need a few more plays to know exactly where this sits overall. But I do love Great Western Trail. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a really neat puzzle. I like that they have the sheep as well. Well, they don't have sheep and cows. They have sheep, but I like that you can sell the sheep for wool, or you can take the sheep to market and sell them at the end for get money in kind of 2 different ways from sheep. So I like the variable options in the game, and I love that they have those base tiles that flip over when you get midway through the game. I think that makes it a little bit more interesting to me and adds a bit of complexity to the game that is helpful and good. I played it. One of my buddies I played it with. We were playing through it. It was like every time we ran into one of those things, he was like, "Oh, this is better. This is better than Great Western Trail." And so I don't feel like I'm alone in just thinking that so many things about this game are just better than the regular 2nd edition. So I haven't tried Argentina. I wouldn't mind trying it. I'd be curious if it's different enough. I'd heard for a while it wasn't really different enough, but I've also heard from sources that say it's like it is quite different and plays differently. But I'm also not one that feels like I have to have every version of a particular game in my collection. I really just want the best version, and then I will play that one the most, and probably wouldn't even touch the other ones. So don't need the boxes taking up room on my shelf. This one definitely not underrated. This is ranked 143, so people like this, and I think they probably like the second edition better. My guess is it's rated a little higher, but this one is fantastic. All right, moving on to number 22, another Garfield game. I feel like this list in particular, I've got multiple Garfield games. Did I have more than one? I don't think I had more than one Stonemaier game on this one, but I did have one on the last one, and then I've got multiple Lacerda games on here. So, yeah, kind of starting to get into my better designers here, I guess. But this one is by S.J. McDonald's and Shem Phillips, and it is Paladins of the West Kingdom. And do I have even an expansion? You know, I would consider the expansion for this. It sounds like it's fun. I played it once with a friend. I do not have the expansion personally, but I do like Paladins of the West Kingdom, and every time I play it, I'm like, this is a fantastic game. It is just one of my favorite Garfield games, and I like so much about it. And from the action selection to the tight economy of the game, it takes a lot of work to kind of try to get the most out of what you're building. And you really have to kind of focus your actions that you take pretty tightly. If you try to spread out and do every action, you're probably not going to make it. It's going to spread your point spread at the end of the game pretty thin. But I think this is an absolutely lovely game. Again, I can't remember if I played it with the expansion material. I thought I did, but maybe I just played the regular and then the expansion material my buddy played afterwards. But I would like to try it, and while I probably wouldn't want to play it all the time, I think he said that didn't really extend the length of the game very much. It just kind of broadened what you could do in the game, which makes me more apt to use the expansion material in this one. On Viscounts, the expansion material just really made the game really long, and I didn't feel like it was worth it in the end. If the expansion material makes the regular game length about the same, but like just gives you more options in game, that's perfect. So that is Paladins of the West Kingdom. Beautiful game, worker placement for the most part, but you're chaining different workers together. So it's a little bit more advanced than your typical worker placement game, in my opinion. But yeah, they did a fantastic job on this one. Next up, last for this particular list, is the final Vital Lacerda game for this list, maybe for my list overall. I think it's the highest rated one I have. And I'm not sure if ultimately this game will remain here as my highest rated, or maybe Inventions will end up overtaking it. But I still love this game. I still think it's an absolutely fantastic game. It is The Gallerist by Vital Lacerda. This one came out in 2015, published by Eagle Griffin Games, 4.29 weight. So I guess you could call it light for a Lacerda. But it says 60 to 150 minutes. That's probably accurate. It took us a while to play it when I last played a 4-player game. But I really like the theme of hunting for artists and purchasing the art, finding the artists. It's got a really nice, I love the action, streamlined action. So there's only 4 actions. I shouldn't say that. There's 4 action spaces, and then you usually have the option of one or the other of the 2 actions available at each action space. But then you have that mechanic of if somebody's in there, you're bumping them out, and then you have the option of that person could take a bump action, which could be very simple and not get them much, or if they have the resources for it, they can actually almost take a whole full action. So there's a lot of thinkiness in this game, trying to take my actions, but also maybe set myself up to where I want people to bump me so that I can get some extra actions in the game if I can sort of anticipate what other people are going to be going for. I think it offers just a really cool way to explore that find the artist theme. I'm not sure if it's an economy as much as it is you feel like you're just pursuing the art and the artist in the game, and you're ultimately trying to make your art pieces score the most at the end of the game. And there's, oh man, it's been a while since I played, so I can't even remember all the scoring options. But I do remember one of my favorite parts of this game is the track along the bottom, because this might be one of the most unique point tracks, because it is kind of like your victory points, but it also is like this, that you can also move your marker back to gain a coin or more here or there if you need an extra coin. And it is how you move. You have like your basically where your prestige level is, so you can move back to the next closest prestige level when somebody bumps you in order to get an extra action. So that track is like does like 3 different things, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's not quite like think Brass Birmingham, where you have an income marker and you have a point marker. It's almost like this is like income plus points plus prestige all on one track, and all 3 of those can be resources for various things. So really unique system there that I think is masterfully done and implemented. So the Gallerist is my number 21. So thank you for joining me for these top 30 to 21. And next video will be possibly, we'll see. I'm thinking about doing all of my top 20 together, but not 100% sure yet. And you might even see that before you see this one. So maybe I shouldn't say next time. Maybe in the future you're watching this and you've already seen the top 1 to 20 and you're just curious about this one. So thanks for joining me. If you have comments or thoughts on any of these games, please put them below, and I will try to reply to as many as I can. Usually I can get to them, but I can't promise it'll be how fast I'll get to them. It just depends on time. But until next time, have a great evening.